what is the difference between really compelling storytelling and just people sitting down and just chatting, just talking, right? So for me is, I'm trying to build a full story arc. And when I'm sitting down and interviewing a guest, I'm trying to get into okay, what is the core message? What is the core takeaway?
Podcast Junkies, episode 220. I'm Harry Duran, host of Podcast Junkies, conversations with interesting and fascinating podcast personalities since 2014. And as of this recording, it's been 6 years since I launched Podcast Junkies, and it's been an incredible ride so far. We're definitely in interesting times now, and now I feel like more than ever I appreciate the ability I've had to build those relationships with all these amazing past guests. In case you missed last week's episode, I spoke to Danielle Desir. She is the founder of womenofpodcasting.com. It's a group that started as a Twitter hashtag and eventually built and grew into the group that it is now, which is led by Danielle and her amazing group of female podcasters of color. This episode's brought to you by Focusrite. There's a fantastic sponsorship happening this month. Focusrite has launched the Podcast Studio Makeover, and it's running from March 6th through April 17th. This is an amazing giveaway, and you should definitely jump on this. They've partnered with a group of companies to give away 3 prize bundles to chosen winners, each of them valued at over $2,300. This bundle is bananas. First off, it's the Scarlett 18i8 third generation USB audio interface. It features 4 upgraded third generation Scarlett mic preamps, the switchable air mode I've mentioned earlier, 2 high headroom instrument inputs, 8 line inputs. This thing is amazing. Then there's the Heil PR40 and PL2T boom arm, a free month of Squadcast. You guys know I love Squadcast, plus 50% off the first 2 months. Simplecast, again, another fantastic partner of the show. You get the first month free. Audio Mute, you get a $500 store credit and a free consultation. Hindenburg, a $95 store credit, enough for journalists to be applied towards an upgrade. And Adam Audio is providing a pair of SP5 headphones. Last but not least, you get to pack it all up in your Namba gear, Lil Namba Remix backpack. This is a crazy, crazy, crazy kit. Make sure you sign up. I've created a special link. Go to podcastjunkies.com/Focusrite promo. That's podcastjunkies.com/Focusrite promo. What are you waiting for? Go sign up now. This week I have a conversation with Ian Gaines. He and I connected at a podcast movement last year, seems like such a long time ago, and he is the host of Immigration Nerds podcast. It's a show that goes beyond the borders and covers all things immigration. We talked a lot about his career trajectory and the success he had when he put himself out there for the creation of this podcast. So he talked about that story, and I think it's really interesting to understand his mindset at the time, how he's grown as a podcast interviewer, and we dig into what he's changed his mind about recently, one of my favorite questions. Let's not forget that this episode is also brought to you by Fullcast. Fullcast.co is the website. If you need help with any aspect of your show, from launch to production and marketing, we can help. Schedule a free chat at fullcast.co/chat15 about your existing or new show. Stay tuned to the end of the episode where I reveal this week's retention hashtag. But for now, let's connect with Ian. So Ian Gaines, host of Immigration Nerds, thank you for joining us on Podcast Junkies.
Thank you, Harry. It is an absolute pleasure to be on. It's a privilege. Thank you.
So let's talk about how we met. It's one of my favorite things to do to kick off each episode. So what's your memory? Because sometimes when you ask 2 people, you get their 2 different stories.
I love that you asked it in that way, because that's 100% usually the case. So this was my first podcast movement. It was in Orlando over the summer, I guess was August. And I recently did a podcast with a policy analyst from Brookings Institution. So actually the producer and audio engineer from Brookings Institution was there. So I was talking to them, and then the talk of the town was Harry. the talk of the town, because he went by and it was just like, yo, that's Harry. That's Harry. You gotta go. You gotta talk to him. So I was like, who is this guy? Because I'm green. I don't know anybody around. So I walk up and he was just like, yeah, he has the podcast and he does, within the community and just for all podcasters. And I was like, wow, this is amazing. So once we started chatting. I talked about Immigration Nerds, and he was like, oh, this is over, some gin and juice. I'm pretty sure. But
I think so. Yeah. I do remember that part.
So from there, we absolutely clicked. We was hanging out for like a couple of days after that too. So
that's the beauty of those conferences. I've been going to Podcast Movement since it started. So it's been a special place in my heart because I remember when it was a Kickstarter, and now it's just blown up. It's literally like the number one podcasting event. So shout out to Jared and Dan for what they've put together. And they just had Evolutions in LA. I think they just crossed the 1,000-person registration mark. So they're blowing up, and they're making a big name for themselves. So it's just fun to watch a lot of my peeps in the podcasting community, like doing a lot of things. And I remember the first time I heard the first episode of the podcast Startup from Gimlet. And now, fast forward 2-3 years, they just got, but they got bought by Spotify for like 100. So it's been a fascinating journey. And I can relate to where you were, because when I went to my first Podcast Movement conference, or even my first conference in this space, New Media Expo, where I got the idea for this show, I remember riding the shuttle van from the airport to the hotel, and I'm like, I don't know anybody here. Because I've been in other business conferences, like I used to work with Business Objects, and they had a huge conference. So I would go with my coworkers. But it was like I would met a couple of guys on the van, and then they're just like, I think I had 1 or 2 friends from the online community and from Facebook friends, and I met them there. So that was nice. But I can relate to that. And I always look for people who are like, there's always going to be new people at a conference. And you never know, you hit it off. And usually what happens is when you hit it off in at that first opening party, and then we just keep bumping into each other. We're just like, what's going on? What's happened? And then it's like this core group of folks that just sort of like circles around for the rest of the time. And then I think I got to introduce you to a couple of folks as well.
Yeah, exactly. I went through my rookie sort of initiation. I just meeting all the new folks, and new to me, but people been there for the last 4 or 5 years, 6 years. And, it's a real strong community that's building, and also that's very supportive, I would say.
Totally.
It's definitely a supportive community where creatives can get together. Everybody has something to say. Obviously, you're on podcast, you're audio, and they're really passionate about whatever their industry is, whatever their focus. I remember after one of the sessions, I go to the bar and I'm having lunch, whatever. I'm sitting down. There's another guy, and the question is like, "Oh, so what's your podcast?" That's just the question that you ask everybody. And this guy, I forget the actual title of it, but literally he said, "Oh, I analyze and review terrible metal bands from the 90s." I was like, that is the most specific podcast I have ever heard. Terrible metal bands. Like, how many is that? Like, how long you can do that series for?
Yeah.
But that's the joy. And he broke it down and talked about Korn and all this other stuff. I'm like, all right, this is great.
Is Korn a terrible one? They got some publicity. I thought they were pretty famous.
See, it's exactly. Music is subjective. So,
It is. When you think about your objectives when you were getting ready to go to the conference, what did you have in mind? Like, what did you want to get out of it? What were you looking for? Like, what would have been like a successful conference for you prior to you arriving there?
Yeah. Well, since this is new for me, once again, it's Immigration Nerds. It's through the law firm Erickson Immigration Group. So we just built out this media side of things, and really just having a platform that stands out against our competitors. where we have a place to stay on top of immigration news that happens, on a week to week basis, right? So we have a voice, we show our expertise, we show our authority within the space, right? And that grew. It got Spotify is the number one immigration podcast on Spotify. We're like 2 or 3 on Apple Podcasts. So, talking to management, we're like, okay, we need to do something. This is rolling. This is going. This has traction. So with that, looking, I follow Pod News, every day they come.
Yes, I'm actually I'm interviewing James Cridland today, as a matter of fact.
Really?
The author.
Man.
Yeah. It's so funny you mentioned him. Like, yeah, we had to make the times work because he's in Australia, but we're chatting today in a couple hours.
Yeah. Well, send me his contact and a plane ticket, and then we can, we can make things work. But,
yeah.
So the initial thing was like, hey, just learning the industry. What is the difference between really compelling storytelling and just people sitting down and just chatting, just talking, right? So for me is, I'm trying to build a full story arc. And when I'm sitting down and interviewing a guest, I'm trying to get into okay, what is the core message? What is the core takeaway that I want my guests to come away with? And then also, I don't want them to be fading out and just like, okay, this is immigration. This is boring. Got to find a way. I tell the people that I work with now, cause now I'm managing. So I have, 2 assistant producers, another guy who does research, and a guy who does video. We're building out like the video aspect of it. Right. And what I tell them all the time is just like, okay, we got to find a way to make immigration sexy. All right. Like, how can we do this because it's very interesting. We're talking about migration, people from, different lands, different cultures moving to a totally new place. And how do they fit in this new environment? Right. So that in itself is amazing. But when you look at it on paper, you're just like, oh yeah, just immigration. So we try to find the magic within that, what makes it special and compelling and thought provoking.
Yeah, I think what's interesting, and we can dive. I'm really curious about like the audiences and what your thoughts about who was going to listen to it and how that's changed over time. But what I love is that you pull people in, like when I was looking at some of the past episodes, obviously topics like separated families and like marijuana legalization in Canada, and then like what's happening with like the trend towards protectionism and stuff like that. So I think people can look at it from the lens of immigration, but then if they find something that they like focus on specifically that's, related to it, like you had the one that says social media accounts now will be collected from visa applicants, which is kind of bananas. I haven't had a chance to listen to that, but just it's fascinating. So if you're following it, it seems like, and because you had early mover status, I don't know the total count of all immigration podcasts, but it seems like you're making a name for yourself in the immigration industry. And I think that's probably what one of the main goals was from the firm.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So one, I have to thank my managers and people who just said, okay, this kid has a crazy idea and he wants to move into media and okay, we're actually going to fund this. This is, I know I'm in a very privileged position and, I don't take it for granted and I'm very grateful for it. So I do whatever I can to build that platform, but also it's stationed in Washington, DC, well, Arlington, Virginia, but I stay in DC. I can talk to think tanks at, as I said, Brookings Institute, one of the top think tanks in, the world, really. You could say the country, but also the world. Politico. We've had journalists from there. We had professors from University of Maryland, University of Howard come through. And matter of fact, next week, I'm not sure when this comes on, but from when we're recording it, the next episode, talking to a professor, and she works on privacy rights in terms of data collection, right? And what's happening at the border is for detainees who come over, they are literally collecting their DNA, right? They're collecting this DNA collection. And because what they say is like, if families come over, they want to make sure and verify that, okay, if a husband and wife come over with a child, make sure that they're all related, right? And not, it's just, a guy and a girl and they just took some kid over and their DNA does not match up, right? But also it brings in the larger conversation is like, okay, what is the legal implications of that?
Totally.
Taking our DNA, not just detainees, it's larger than that. Convicted felons, that is like the government is CODIS, CODIS is an acronym, but is a government agency under the FBI, right? They collect DNA of, convicted felons, detainees, and other U.S. citizens, and it moves around the different agencies. So it's like, okay, there's nothing more personal of an identification than my DNA. So what are you doing with this? You talk about the larger conversation of, Facebook and the data wars and Twitter with data. What are people buying and selling your data? They're saying that's the new oil, the digital oil. Like, man, what's deeper than DNA? So like, these are the conversations we're having. It's not just sitting down like, okay, Trump passed the new travel ban and we talk about that, which we're literally episode is coming out very shortly on that, but we spice that up. But also the more theoretical and philosophical questions that comes with migration. I would say this last example, we have something working with the coronavirus, right? The coronavirus happening in China. And so in America, there's a 14-day restriction from travel from China to and from. Other countries did it as well, like France and I want to say UK. But so you take that instance like, oh wow, that's stopping travel because of this pandemic, right?
Yeah, when airlines just stopped flights to Hong Kong, I think United or something. I just saw it like on a tweet or something like that. Yeah.
Absolutely. So with that, the coronavirus, right? But now if I can have an expert come on who looks at the total history of what was the migration sort of trends, what was the migration trends for pandemics throughout history, right? So when you think about what happened to migration when SARS hit, what happened? We go all the way back to the Black Plague.
Or watch the movie World War Z.
That's the next one. That's the 2025. Just wait. We got information on this. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, like when the Black Plague hit, how was Europe restructured by people fleeing and moving?
Oh, yeah.
Just the migration trends from there. So migration is bigger than just the latest, immigration. How many people from, China came to America? How many people from Saudi Arabia moved? Like we're trying to expand it and make it broader in a sense where people understand that, hey, it affects your everyday lives, So yeah.
Yeah, there's so many. It's so interesting. I saw on Twitter somebody in New York. I'm originally from New York. I grew up there, and someone in New York was tweeting that they were just losing their mind because apparently Trump banned New Yorkers from allowing them to renew their TSA travel thing, where you can it's that pass where you can the speed pass where when you're traveling, the TSA I forgot what it's called, but the travelers program.
Right. Like the first travelers, yeah, they get to skip the line.
Yeah, the one where you try when you go to the airport, you can skip the line, right? The TSA plan. Apparently, New Yorkers cannot renew that service because New York has been declared a sanctuary city for immigrants, and apparently Trump equates that with like like bad people coming over. So this little tit for tat thing is like having so many like rippling effects, and it's just crazy. Like to your point, I mean, it touches whether we want to or not. Like immigration touches us in ways sometimes we don't even expect.
Right, man. So, and that's what I'll say for your like listenership audience is even if you have whether it's a podcast or a platform that is, pretty specific, pretty, nuanced, and just like immigration. That's a very particular, like a very specific genre, right? You can find a way of, okay, how does this topic influence the world? You can go that perspective. Or how does the world influence your specific topic, right? And you can broaden it out. You can always blend different genres together and different talking points of how does this impact the global trend of things, right? So it's, and really when it comes down to podcasting, it's different from the radio. We're not trying to reach, the super masses. We want very fervent fans that loves whatever. You love Marvel, you love Wolverine. There's a Wolverine podcast
totally.
that's all Wolverine, that has his height, his weight, and when he was born and all his first adventures. And people, you could do an hour and a half long each episode.
And I'm sure they do. There's probably several of them.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that's interesting.
Talk to me a little bit about how you wind the clock back a bit, how you got involved in here and how long you've been at the firm and how your career trajectory, had you end up there.
Yeah, that's interesting. So after school, I don't want to age myself, you know what I'm saying? After I'm dropping some jewels, they were like, what? He's just a kid. I'm not going to listen, whatever the hell are you talking about? I got kids, but, yeah, so at 2014, I graduated from University of Chicago and I was a political science major, and my trajectory at the time was going into law. So from Chicago, I get a job as a paralegal in DC because I just wanted to test the legal field to see how that worked for me. And it was the best thing that I did, because for those people, if you're 100% sure that hey, I want to be a pilot, and you just know that at 13, go for it. Don't ask no questions. Don't double think yourself. Just go be a pilot. You're going to be a pilot. For those who are graduating and say, being a lawyer would be interesting, or, working in politics would be interesting. You're still sort of wavering. I would suggest to try it out, try out it, being in that environment, working with lawyers. And so you can get a full understanding of what that job entails. So, and that's exactly what I did. And after about a year and a half, I was like, I don't want to do this shit. That's exactly the revelation that came to me. In college, I also did music videos. So I was still I played football. So that has a big part of my life, but half my friends was football guys and the other half were theater nerds and
interesting mix.
Yeah, and those two parties did not mix. I was the only blend between them, which is weird. And so that's when I got into video stuff, production, and radio, just helping on radio. I did an internship in radio. And I was like, man, and I thought about 2 years in after graduating, I was like, man, Ian, what do you really want? You really don't care about pushing papers, law, reading text, doing the semantics there. How do you want to make that impact? And honestly, it came down to, what do I do the most when I'm not getting paid for it, when I'm just chilling, relaxing, what I just enjoy? I just love interviews. I just sit down. It started off with Howard Stern. I was, 7 years old. My uncle, he would listen to Howard Stern. I'm getting ready for the bus.
Wow.
And there's talking about strippers and stuff like that on there, and Beetlejuice and all that. I remember all this. I was very indoctrinated at a young age.
Very at an impressionable young age, listening to Howard Stern. That's so wild. That's probably the youngest Howard Stern fan I've ever heard. So.
I wasn't even know if I was a fan. I was just in the environment. I was just there.
That's OG radio right there, man.
Absolutely. And just how powerful his voice was and how compelling it was. That always stuck with me. And then later on, in high school, and college was like, like now Charlemagne the God, Charlemagne the God from Breakfast Club. So, and I was like, when I go home, I don't really watch series that much. I like sit down. I like to listen to interesting people, successful people, people who achieve something, people who have a certain sort of ideology or philosophy that's interesting.
Yeah.
And just to sit down and just pick their brain, go back and forth. The conversation, like what sort of ideas do you have that you can bring and help others with? And to me, that's the most fascinating thing. And I was like, I can do this. I can do this until they come knocking, until my number's pulled, So that was the thing. And I was like, oh, okay, I can, I would do this. And first I worked I lucked up. I did some, temp work at NPR. So I got
wow, that's nice. That's helpful.
Yeah. I like that really got to see it, and was like, to be fair, it was like 6 weeks that I was working, but just to be in an environment, just the level of,
oh yeah, that's the major leagues. And when you talk about radio, right? Like everyone's like, oh, NPR, man, like they don't play around there.
Right. And that didn't go to like a full-time thing. So when I came to EIG, in my mind, I went as a paralegal because that was like my background, my resume. But shout out to Hiba Amber, Justin Parsons, of course, Jerry Erickson. They were the first people to say, like, when I went to them and said, like, hey, I was checking, none of our competitors in immigration law have a podcast. I'm telling you, podcast is going to blow. That is going to be the platform for audio. And, especially when you're talking to people that's, in a different generation, they don't quite see what's coming. But like, I have to be in the future because I'm going to be living in it. So like, I have to know what's going to be the next 10, 15 years because
totally. Yeah. That's a great point.
That's what's being built. So I had to convince them, and I was paralegal for half the time. And then for the first 3 episodes, I was a paralegal, but then on the weekends, I would do the interviews, edit it, put it together, do the research, everything. And I put it together, and like our CEO got to see. Now how it flipped into not just a part-time thing I did on the side to something that was, okay, we just got to recognize it. Like, what I'm saying? If Kobe knocked down 30 on you, like 3 games in a row, like, okay, somebody got to guard him. Like, does anybody know his name? Who is that guy? Who's that 17-year-old killing them? So,
yeah.
Like actually one of our clients was Netflix, and one of the people from there emailed, I'm not sure if it was one of our attorneys, and said, oh, you guys got a podcast? I was just listening to it. It's pretty cool. Wow, it's good stuff. Like, whatever. And I was in, man. I was in.
You were like, yes.
I was in from there. And that was one of our biggest clients. So, because a lot of our clients are sort of Silicon Valley tech hub type people. So they're savvy. So what helped me out is that they're already in, just like their mind is in 2030, like the mind is in 2030, 2035. They know where podcast is. So they're podcast listeners. And that kind of set my way out. And then I did it G style. I'm not going to lie. I did it G style. I wrote out in a Word doc, and then put it in a PDF of like, hey, I believe this needs to be full time. I have to, cause in order to bring the quality and the type of guests that we want. And so I can put the time and research into the topics.
Was this after, this is before Podcast Movement, right?
Yeah, this is before Podcast Movement. So before Podcast Movement, so I've been doing this for about a year. I know it's not going to sound like much time, a year and a half, but
when you think about it, and this is what I want the listener to focus on, what you think about what you've been able to accomplish in that period of time, and also to introduce your firm to the world of podcasting and have success with it to the point where people who are listening are coming back and realizing that it's valuable content that that they're listening to on a regular basis, to the point where then you can feel like, okay, now it's time to step this up to the next move. This is like fascinating stuff, and I'm sure there's people who are currently at their 9 to 5 who probably jotting down notes feverishly because there's like, wait, I think it's time for me to pull an E in my company.
Pull it. I'm telling you, do it. Don't wait. No, no, but honestly,
Talk about that Word doc you were putting together, and you basically you decided like, I'm gonna rewind a little bit back because I want to peek into your head a little bit. Like when you were doing this part time, and then you said, I think I got something here, right? And then you were like, I'm gonna. So then there's some part of you where the wheels start turning. You're like, I want to put a proposal together because I want to do this full time. So talk about what your thought process was around there as you were getting ready to kind of move forward with making this proposal.
yeah, I will have to correct you. I didn't think I had something. That's sometimes what your situation is going to be, is not knowing the next step, whether you're going to be successful or not, but you know that you want to do this thing, right?
Yeah. So your passion was there.
That was the only thing that's driving. I didn't know I was going to be, successful at it, or I still don't even think, like, I'm just always improving, just trying to improve, just raise the level each time. But if it's something that you want, you're like, hey, I'm going to go for it. The worst that they can tell me is no. That's the worst thing. Shout out to my pops. He told me this very young. I remember this girl when I was 13. She broke my heart, and he was just like, listen, the worst thing they can say is just no. And then there's a whole sea of like other potential. And I was like, oh, you're right. I don't feel bad anymore.
It wasn't as bad. It wasn't as bad as I thought it would be.
That was actually way too easy. I got over that way easier than I thought I would. But yeah. So getting to the proposal. So I didn't know, but I knew myself that in order to raise my game, I needed more time to do it. And I couldn't burn the candle from both ends, doing the paralegal work and then also meetings. So I wrote out literally what I did. I'll give you all the gems. So what I did was I went to Glassdoor and I just, podcast producer or something from a reputable place, and where they had the roles and responsibilities and all that. Man, be lazy. It's okay. I copied and pasted most of that, put it on there, and then tweaked it to my particular situation. And from the roles and responsibilities, even who I was even like audacious enough to say who I report to. Is like, yeah, I'm going to report to this person too about this. It's crazy. I know, it's ridiculous.
It's good. It's great.
And then like the hours that it would take. But the thing about it, I was very fair. The one thing that nobody can say is like, oh, like in terms of, the salary, he was upping it, or in terms of, the responsibility, he's taking too much, or taking like the title that was too high. Like I'm the managing director of no. I knew my place, and I was very realistic about it. And that's how I structured it. Cause I knew that if I have this opportunity, I'm going to work up to now where we have 5 people on the team. But it takes that knowing where you are. It's that awareness, the self-awareness of, hey, this is where I am right now. And just having the patience to like, okay, if I keep on working, I'm going to get up to this place. And when a person sees that, they're like, oh man, they're actually kind of, I wouldn't say lowballing it, but it's like, okay, they're really being honest with their position. I know I didn't have experience back there. All I can offer them was me busting my ass. That's all I can offer.
It's always great. It's always great to over deliver, right? To kind of set a standard that you can meet, and then just kind of like try to like 10x at that because then it really shows like the passion that you have for it. So I'm curious what the team looks like now in terms of like roles and responsibilities. If you could outline that.
Oh man, I'm going to do a bunch of shout outs so they can listen to it later. So Luke, Bianco, and David White, they are really smart guys, about like a year out of college, but they're researchers, right? They do a lot of the research. Talking right now, I said like the DNA collection. So I have, one person look into like the person who I'm interviewing, like their research background and the papers that they wrote, and just give me those notes and stuff like that. So I can go in and kind of have like a shortcut to that. And then Luke just generally like on the government side, what I was telling you about, like the CODIS, the CODIS under the FBI, like he was looking into that sort of stuff. Brandon, he works a lot of more of the social media side of things. So whenever we post an episode, we usually do like a little teaser track, and it's a little video, like it's a minute, minute 15, but it will have the graphics. It'll be transcribed. It has the subtitles, and you have like a fluid background that's going.
Like an audiogram.
Right. Exactly. An audiogram of that. So he's doing that, and we're kind of working this now. So like the YouTube aspect of it, and what capacity do we want the podcast to be visual, and then what part audio. So that's being worked out now. And then Carly, she's our marketing director. So she just keeps me in check, just make sure I don't go too over the line with things. Cause I want to do everything. I just want to do everything. And then she'd be like, okay, Ian, okay, we can't have T-Pain come through. All right. And sing to the crowd. I was like, but why not? The people will love it. Everybody loves T-Pain.
What has been the most exciting part for you in terms of the people that you've had to speak with? Can you recall like a recent interview or someone you've chatted with where you either learned something? I mean, I'm sure you're learning something from your guests all the time, but something that sort of like lights you up, and it's like asking to pick your favorite kid. Obviously, I know that, but something that comes to mind. One of your recent episodes.
It'll be hard to dig deep in the crates, because now we're like 77 podcasts in. And after each week is like, okay, on to the next. I'm just always on to the next. But most recently is the episode that I did with Jawanda Jones. She's an attorney, and she's actually a Liberian citizen, right? Well, she was born and raised in Liberia. And Liberia is a country in West Africa, but a lot of people don't know its ties to America. So Liberia was created by freed African American slaves. You'll be surprised how many Americans actually don't know this. To bring immigration context to it, Trump, the administration released a pathway to citizenship, direct citizenship for Liberian citizens. And you would think like, oh, why do they get this special pathway to citizenship? But then you dig into the history, and it's like, oh, wow, Liberia is like America's little brother, in a sense. So like in the this is actually before it was completely abolished, slavery. There were certain freed African slaves, right? And for many different reasons, some slaveholders thought that, okay, if you have the presence of freed slaves around our plantation, then they might motivate our slaves to sort of uprise or, gain their freedom, right? So
yeah, they don't want them getting any crazy ideas or something like that, right?
We need to find a place to put these people, right? So that was one side of it. But then there was a other side of actual just freed slaves saying like, hey, listen, we want to leave this place. We know that, being here, we were brought here against our will. And this country was not designed for us. We want to go back to our homeland and design our own country, in our image, right? It was two-pronged, but yeah. So I went into the history, and the craziest part about it is the mentality in terms of the superiority and inferiority complex, right? Because it's not a race thing. It's not a color thing. What happened was when those freed African slaves, they went to Liberia, there were still people in that area, native Africans, they call them indigenous, Liberians. So, but since they felt like the freed slaves felt like, oh, we came from America, they did exactly to those natives what, white slave owners did to them. They subjugated them. They made them second class citizens. They weren't able to be a part of government or have any high ranking positions. And this lasted and these are black African Americans, slaves. And this happened for, over like 150 years until in the 1980s, it was just a civil war. Because it took 150 years for a native Liberian to become the actual president, right? And it was through means that was a little forceful, and and that's what started the disbalance. But what do you expect? Like you can only oppress people for so long until it comes back to you. It's inevitable. It's just human nature, right? And you would think that these people who were subjugated to such atrocities would know that, but no, they internalized it and they inflicted it upon.
Yeah, it's almost like that. It's a little bit, may not be a direct correlation, but kind of when they talk about the bullying, the person who's bullying almost every single time they're getting bullied at home, right? So they're just trying to take it out. So it's funny how you would think like a population that learned, who had to go through that, that subjugation, they'd be the first ones to like not put anyone else through that. How many numbers are we talking about of African Americans that went from the U.S. to Liberia?
Oh, see now, because I say exactly the number in the podcast. I'll direct you to our Liberian podcast, but it was like over a course of 40 years, maybe like 20,000, something like that. Yeah. So.
All right, small number. Yeah, that's very interesting. Thank you for sharing that. I did not know that, so I learned something new today too. So that's awesome. And we'll make sure we have a link to the episode in the show notes as well. So make sure you send that along. How have you grown as an interviewer since you started?
As a interviewer, I think naturally I always felt comfortable and just confident around people, especially one-on-one, just sitting down and just like picking each other, being able to pick each other's brains. But as specifically an interviewer, making them feel comfortable, right? Is a difference of you yourself. Like, oh yeah, I got this down pack and it's good. Like in your mind, you're good. But hey, this is the first time that this person's sitting across from you, or this is the first time that they're ever doing an interview. So there's some nerves there. And so what I like to do the first 5 minutes, I'm just chatting, usually about something that I've read about them. So get them talking about themselves, really. And it makes it sort of easy for them. It's like, oh yeah, well, yeah. And it kind of strokes the ego a little bit. It's like, oh, well, actually, yes, it was a Pulitzer Prize winner. And, I'm glad that you knew this. I have it hanging on my fridge. Yeah. And nothing substitutes for that. Like, man, it's kind of cliche. For 2020, I said that motivation is dead for 2020. I don't want to hear no other motivation quotes. I'm motivation quote out. Y'all, that's all y'all got is words and motivation. That doesn't feed me. I need totally, actions, yeah. but I say all that just to say, is nothing substitutes work. Nothing substituted. And I have a lot of people come up now. I'm not sure if people see as audio or video or not, but I'm fairly young looking. I'm a black dude with just got like twists and curls and stuff like that. So they're like, oh, this is the dude. Like is he our DJ or something like that? Like we about to jam. It's about to be lit. Like, yeah,
Capri.
Exactly. So I think in first meeting that there is a little bit like, oh, okay, nothing bad. It does not faze me in a sense, but I always know because I have the information. So soon as you sit down and I can methodically go down the talking points with them and ask intelligent and insightful questions, then they're like, oh, okay. He knows what he's talking about. Let's go. And then all that sort of stuff melts away. It melts away. And I'll say that for
And
anybody.
the time flies by, right?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, time flies by.
Like it's flying by right now. And I would say that for anybody. Like if you any sort of marginalized group or disenfranchised group, if you're a woman, gender, or if you're any sort of ethnicity, and you feel like, hey, there's less of you in a particular space, the best thing that you can do is just put in the work, and sometimes it might be the extra hours. Sorry, that's how the game is. Like I didn't create it. I didn't decide the rules, but I know what's in front of me. I know this reality. So instead of, just, I won't say, complaining, but instead of, just talking about the issue, it's like, hey, yes, that's 100% an issue that needs more representation in this area and that area. But until we get to that point, and I know we got other people working in those areas, I'm going to do everything I can do to break in here, like in this facet. So, immigration, like what voice would not be better for this, young, youthful, forward thinking, minded, inquisitive, really want to get to the facts, really want to understand what's going on in this world and how as a globe that we can better understand each other.
And I think what's interesting is that you provide the generational crossover as well, because if it was just nothing against an old generation, but if it's two folks in their 60s having this conversation versus you having a conversation with someone who's older, but then you provide the context of what you're learning and the lens through which you see the world and your generation sees the world. I think those types of mixes, they create for some really, and I'm sure you've experienced it, some really dynamic conversations.
Yes. I will say this. I'm not sure what point we are here, but anybody who's trying to get into storytelling, whether it's journalism, but podcasts in general, I would recommend Eric Nuzum, Make Noise. It's a great, that book for me, putting together, just structuring a narrative, knowing, cause you can have the interview, but okay, do you know where to put the specific clips and what type of music to use as the bedding to draw out that emotion, right? What is the pacing of the story? Are you staying on one topic too long and you're losing your audience? Man, we can dive into the 2.0. I can go to advanced lessons too, whichever we want to do.
We'll save that for when you come back for round 2.
We can do that. So, but yeah, people who are starting out for podcasts, like that's good. But yeah, start off where you are, like whether it's NPR, This American Life, New York Times, those tried and true journalists. And even if you don't want to do it that way, because I know myself, I'm a little bit more lax. I like to be loose with it. I like to use different jargon. So I'm not that formula, but it's good to know that formula, to know like, okay, this is the established, this is how you break a story. This is how you investigate. This is how you research it and tell a story. Okay. And this is the professional button up version of that. Right. The framework. Yes, exactly. Use it as a framework. Know the framework first, then improvise. See, a lot of people want to improvise and start breakdancing and they don't know how to two-step. Like, learn the two-step first before you start spinning on your head. You're going to break your neck. All right.
No, that's good. Yeah, it's just dropping gems all day. So what motivates you? Because you talk about, it's not the quotes. I know that. So what keeps you going? I mean, you live in your dream now. You wanted to be in media and you made this position for yourself. So what keeps you motivated?
Keeps me motivated is the need to be better than my last episode, to be better than my last project, whatever last thing that I put out. Like in my mind, that's the new floor. That's the new just floor. Okay. It can't,
the new baseline. Yeah.
Dip below that. And it's a game that I play in my head that is like, okay, no, that two episodes ago, I already did that. And that's kind of, corny. That's trite. Like, no, really think about this. Spend some time on this. You know, you can make this better. How can I tell this story better? How can I bring out, the emotion better out of people? And as long as I do that, and it's small steps, man, it's small. It's not leaps, but I can feel good when I release whatever sort of project I finish whatever episode that I'm doing, or just projects in general. I'm like, okay, I know I did better than the last thing, and it's some sort of area. And sometimes you have to pick it out. Like, okay, what do I want to get better? And last time, my questions weren't as, introspective. It wasn't insightful. Let me go a layer deeper. Or last one, I didn't research the topic as strongly, and so I was just surface level. Let me see if I can go a layer deeper. So you can pick apart points in the game. Once again, I'll go back to Kobe because RIP, man, that was my number one. Like, that was my number one from the beginning. But yeah, like, he knew that, okay, his mid range was great. He had a great mid range, and he could dunk on you. But then later on, he had to work on a 3-point. And then later he had to work on his defense, because people was like, kind of, pushing him over, then he was first time, all defense. So, I need to get bigger. So I'm getting pushed a lot. Okay. I need to go in the weight room. So you break it into little tasks, break it up into little tasks. You're not going to save the world tomorrow, break it up in little tasks. And then, okay, I finished that task. Okay. What's the next sort of weakness, or what's the next thing that I need to work on? So what what motivates me, and that's just my sports background, is just like, I'm a competitive. And since I can't play football anymore, I can't run through people's chests. Like, I can't do that anymore. Like, but here I'm competitive against myself. So yeah.
Where's that come from?
Oh man. My mom will want me to say her, but, she's like, baby. No, man, it's so natural. I don't even know. Like, as long as I remember, I just always wanted to, I just hated losing, but I wasn't the guy who would not like losing and then stop. Like, I'm going to figure out, why am I not good at it? Why are you beating me? like I remember I was just thinking, like, this one kid, I'm not going to say his name, but he kept on beating me in one-on-one. I was like, what about this? This is impossible. Why you keep on beating me? I was like, oh wow, his dribble is a little bit better. Okay, let me get my dribble a little bit better. Okay, he's really good, backing down. I need to get a little stronger. Okay, so it's just that thing. And then you wind up like, oh man, now I'm beating them 3 out of 5 times, 7 out of 10 times. And it's that work. But the competitive, I come from a family of college athletes, track runners, football players, basketball players. So like,
oh, I'm sure that's it then. There's some of that there, because you're just like, you're seeing this around you and you're just like, oh, this is how this family plays at the top level. So,
do you know how competitive Just Dance gets on Wii during the holiday season? People, you'll stop talking to a family member for months because they beat you on Just Dance, the Michael Jackson version. Who's just killing that?
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. Oh man. So this has been amazing. This is a lot of fun. Couple questions as we wrap up. What's something you changed your mind about recently?
My first idea is not necessarily my best idea. Learning to, when you have better information that comes through, and even though you worked on something so long and you almost become married to it, emotionally you're attached to it, to step back and look at that new information and be like, oh man, damn, that does make better sense. Okay. I got it. Cool. So being a little bit more easy to, cause I'm pretty headstrong, but I like to be a little bit more easy with, divorcing myself from that first love, and know that, okay, the second one is different, but it might actually help, the overall quality in the product. Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like people never use the 1.0 version of a software, because it's like, nah, something's going to be wrong with that one. like Apple products, like, I'm going to wait for the 1.1 or the 2.0.
But then you get arrogant and you just be like, man, the first thing I drop is fire. That's a masterpiece. What you talking about? I said it is done. Like,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. What's the most misunderstood thing about you?
You wouldn't tell from this podcast, but when I'm actually like working, like in work mode, I'm very, I want to say introvert, yeah, but I'm kind of like in my own space. And if people walk around, some people, I don't want them to think like, hey, I'm blowing you off or I'm not sort of like listening to you. It's just like, for some reason, I'm terrible at multitasking. So I just need to put my full focus into this. So it's like, trust me, I'm not trying to be an ass. That compassion, that empathy is 100% there, but I have different modes where I'm like, okay, work mode, and then, okay, chilling with Harry, talk, play mode, you know what I'm saying? But like for them, it's like, wow, how can you make it snap like that? Like, it's just
Code switching.
exactly. That's all it is. So I hope they, find that out, but yeah.
Well, brother, I appreciate we making this work. I'm glad you kept the invite open, and it was like, oh, we talked about it, but then real life takes over. But you reached out, and I'm like, oh, that was nice to see, nice to get it on the calendar, and I just knew from when we met, we hit it off, and so these conversations I always know are going to be great because I've had a bit of a preview. I've had a drink at the bar with someone, and I'm just like, oh, this is like cool vibes. I can just imagine, and I just know like an hour is going to go by like that. So, and that's what happened here. So, I'm proud of what you've done with this show. This is a testament to kind of following your passion and figuring out where you can make things work in the environment that you're at and how you can add value. And that's definitely what you've done with Immigration Nerds. I know the law firm is really probably surprised and maybe not so surprised because they know who you are.
They're still surprised. They're like, really? Like, huh? Who's coming in?
Wait, you're being interviewed now on other shows? Like, what's going on? All right, man. So where's the best place for folks to learn more about the show and to connect with you?
Yes. So our podcast, you can go to www.eiglaw.com and you will find our podcast there. Also, obviously, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher is Immigration Nerds. So if you're interested in learning about the latest news and updates, policy, from, within immigration and by experts in the field, then you can tune in and then hopefully we can have a good time while doing it. So. Yeah. And then also our Twitter is IMM Nerds and our Instagram is the same thing. IMM Nerds. Yep.
And again, we'll make sure we have all those links in the show notes for folks to check it out. I'm glad we got a chance to connect. Hopefully it won't be too long before we jam out again.
We jamming. And I'm getting those photos too.
I appreciate you taking the time, man. Have a fantastic day.
Thank you, Harry. My pleasure.
Thanks again to Ian for coming on the show. It was nice to remember how we had a good time at Podcast Movement and made a plan to follow up, but it took longer than I had originally anticipated. And it was interesting to find out that how Ian was growing within his company and as a podcaster, which led to what I think is a much richer conversation now. Make sure you continue to support our sponsor, Focusrite, and maker of the Scarlett 2i2, what I have currently connected. And as of this recording, there should still be time to sign up for the promo, the podcast studio makeover with $2,300 in amazing prizes. Head on over to podcastjunkies.com/Focusrite promo. Podcast production and marketing provided by Fullcast. Book a free call with us at fullcast.co/15 to find out how we can help you with your show. Intro and outro music composed by Cedar and Soil, cedarsoil.com for his amazing list of music. My so-frequent reminder to subscribe to the show if you haven't already. Podcastjunkies.com/subscribe, and all the great podcast players and catchers are there. Tune in next week for my conversation with Amy Woods, host and founder of 10X Marketing. Amy and I know each other from past podcast conferences, and while we always get a chance to hang out during and after some of these events, it was really during this conversation that I learned a lot about why she's such an awesome human being. If you made it this far, no doubt you're waiting for the retention hashtag. Let's go with hashtag Immigration Ian. Immigration Ian as the hashtag, and tag myself at podcast_junkies and Ian at IMM Nerds. That's I, M as in Mary, M as in Mary, NERDS, M Nerds. Thanks for all you do to support the show. Stay safe, stay home, and take care of each other. We'll talk next week.